Hi, everyone. So, a few months ago, I was on a trip with my family to the Lake District, and we stopped on the way on a place called the Quarry Bank Mill. Some of you might know. And it's a really amazing place, if we can show it. It's a really amazing place, and it's very impressive the way people have been weaving cloth. And one of the things that I was very impressed about is the weaving loom. And basically, it has been used for many centuries to weave cloth. And the way it works is very simple, that you have multiple threads, parallel one to the other. They're called warps. And then there is one thread, which is called the weft, which interweaves all the threads into one cohesive piece of cloth, right? Which is very actionable, that you can use to warm yourself, to protect yourself, or just to make yourself beautiful. Now, I believe that Google Analytics is very similar, at least the process is very similar, in that we have data, which is very similar to Cotton, and then we have reporting, which is good for tying things up, and then we have action, right? And I believe that Google Analytics can be the weft of your business data, in that it can bring all data sources that you have in your organization into one place where you can use to make meaningful and actionable decisions with your data. Now, I'm going to talk today a little bit about some of those integrations and why they're so important and how they can be useful to make data-driven decisions. And those are the official Google Analytics integrations. Basically, we have AdWords, we have AdSense, we have Google Play, iTunes Store, we have the Webmaster Tools integration, YouTube, and we have a few double-click integrations. Now, we also have some custom integrations, which you can use to bring things like your internal systems, your CRM, some advertising platforms you can bring into Google, some data from them, and then email systems, and basically anything that you want to bring into Google Analytics. And just coincidentally, next week my book is coming out, which is Google Analytics Integrations. And it's all about Google Analytics integrations. So if you want to learn more, feel free to buy a copy and share with your friends. Now, I'm going to focus on three important things today. First, how to measure behavior across devices. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about adding context to your data to make it more meaningful. And last, I'll talk about how do you measure all your campaigns in a way that you can make smarter decisions with your marketing. Now, I'm going to start with a short video about cross-device behavior.
Welcome to NFL Network's playoff coverage. We have plenty to talk about as the race to the Super Bowl.
The NFL Draft is officially open.
Here are my NFL.com fantasy projections for 2011. Adrian Peterson's one of my top running backs.
This is NFL Red Zone, where you get every touchdown from every game. Touchdown!
Get the NFL anytime, anywhere.
And just to clarify, NFL is an American thing. I think it's sports website, something. So for those of you that don't know, I think it's pretty big in the US. Now, I think many of us, we behave that way, right? We read things on our laptops, and then we have to go somewhere, and then we keep reading on our phones, and we expect the behavior to be smooth between devices, right? And for us, trying to analyze this data, it's pretty hard and frustrating sometimes, because we're trying to understand how users are behaving, not how clients are behaving, or sessions, right? And you heard a little bit from Joss about cross-device behavior, but from my experience, when it comes to analytics, people's memory is pretty weak. So it takes just a few minutes for people to forget about analytics. So I'm going to talk a little bit about user ID as well. And basically the way it works on analytics is that every time that you visit a website or an app from a device, you have a client, right? So there is one client is a browser, and then the other client is a mobile device, another client is a tablet, and then you must find a way to join those clients into users, right? Because if I visit from 3 different devices, I'll be counted as 3 different users. So the user ID is the solution that Google Analytics brought in order to solve this problem, to understand the full customer journey. And it's not very, it's not very hard to do that, but as you probably understand by now, it's really important to have some kind of sign-in in order for you to be able to join those clients together into a user, right? And one of the examples that I like is Tesco. I'm a Tesco client. I think today is not a great day to say that I'm a Tesco client. And I just announced that they have a loss of £6.4 billion last year. But I'm a client and I like Tesco. And basically, every week I buy groceries from their website, and I manage my list from their app, and I visit the store, to buy things for an event that I have or something that I forgot to buy. And they're very smart about the way they join those clients together, right? Because I have a club card, and I have a huge incentive to be signed in all the time because I have coupons and I have promotions and all kinds of other incentives as well. So I'm always signed in all devices, right? And same thing, for example, British Airways. I check in through my app and I buy tickets on the website, and I visit the lounge sometimes. So they know what I'm doing, and it's really important in order to understand, for example, content consumption or how people are using those devices. It's really important. And one of the things that I believe is that registration sign-in, is one of the most important conversions for every website out there, because it really enables us to understand how people are consuming our content and using our different properties or different touch points. So, and the kind of a report that you'll get if you start using the user ID and cross-device behavior, you'll see that this is the device path report. And this is really interesting because you can see, for example, if you see lots of desktop on this side of the screen, it means that you're acquiring a lot of people through desktop. And if you see a lot of mobile, for example, in the last step of these paths, it means that mobile is a great device for conversion, right? So we're looking at the user path and which device the user used. So it's really interesting to understand how you should reach out to the customers in each of those steps. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. So the second thing that I would like to talk about is adding context to the data. And I think this is really important because when you're talking to your colleagues, in your company, you don't talk about sessions, you don't talk about users, you talk about your customers, and you might be talking about, your silver customers or people from New York or people that bought more than 5 times in the website. And very, most probably you have some kind of table like this one in your internal system, right, on your CRM. And now, you want to get this data into Google Analytics because when you, for example, when you have bronze and silver customers into Google Analytics, you can start looking at behavioral patterns for those users. And there are mainly 2 ways for you to, not mainly, but 2 very powerful ways for you to get data into Google Analytics to add more context to your data. And the first one is custom dimensions. I don't know if you heard, but it's a way for you to create dimensions inside Google Analytics and add your own dimensions. And the way it works, it's not, this is the only piece of code that I'm showing in the presentation. And basically in the first line, you're creating, you're starting to send information to Google Analytics, and you're adding the user ID, as I mentioned before, right? And then you're adding other dimensions. For example, here I'm adding the bronze dimension. So this customer is bronze, and it's from New York, right? So that's a hit that I'm sending to Google Analytics. Now, this will enable you to build this kind of table inside Google Analytics where you can merge information from your CRM and from Google Analytics behavioral data. And you will see things like, my bronze users using desktop. I had 543 users coming to the website this week, for example, and they saw these pages, and they had this kind of conversion rate. So you can start merging this data, and it's really powerful. And you can also see this. So my previous screenshot from the device path, we saw for all the users, right? But then you can start looking just for a segment of the users, right? Just for silver users, or your gold users. And then you can start tailoring the website or your app to your most valuable customers. So that's one way to get data into Google Analytics. Now, let's suppose you have other types of data which are a little bit more sensitive, right? So, for example, this user is a top 1% user, or this is a money-making user, or this is a money-losing customer, right? So you have all kinds of internal classifications about your users that, it might be a little bit, let's say, confidential, right? You don't want your users to know about that. And as I mentioned in my previous example, the custom dimensions example, you have to send this information through the code, which means that if there is a savvy user that looks at the code of the website, and I do that every time, so if I am your customer, I will see that if you show through the code. Now, you don't want to send this information through the code because your customers might see that information, right? That's why we built a feature called data import on Google Analytics. So if you log into Google Analytics and you click on admin on top of your screen, and then you'll see a menu called data import. Now, what I'm doing here, I'm creating a data set, right? And basically, it's a user data that I'm uploading to Google Analytics. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a CSV file, for example, and upload to Google Analytics with my customer ID from my backend, from my CRM, and then you must have the same key to link this data. And this will enable you to do this kind of analysis inside Google Analytics. For example, my top 1% clients, they're behaving this and that way, and they're doing these things, and they're consuming this content, and they're using those devices. So it makes Google Analytics way more powerful and way more meaningful for you to make better decisions using this data. Now, the last thing, I'm going to talk about a little bit about marketing spend and how can you make better use of Google Analytics in order to improve your marketing performance. And first of all, mobile first, right? And if you have an app, it's very important for you to link your app to Google Analytics first, because if you have a website and you're sending campaigns to your website, you own the website, it's yours, right? So it's easier to track this information. Now, if you have an app, you're sending people to an app market, right? To Google Play or to the iTunes Store. And you have to get your tracking right, because people are getting there, and then from there, they're getting to your app. So you must link the app to Google Analytics first. So it's very straightforward. You can look on Google, how to do that. But basically, you'll link the app to the GA property. You have to update the Android manifest for an Android app. You have to add campaign parameters and do some tweaking to the Android SDK, and very similar to iOS as well. So you would need to do that first, right? Now, the kind of report that you'd be able to see from this, just from linking the app to Google Analytics is, so here what you can see is you can see all the sources that brought customers to the App Store, right? Or to Google Play. And then you'll see how many people viewed your page. You'll see how many people installed the app and how many users actually opened the app. And that's really powerful because you can start optimizing your app page, for your store page, for example. If you make a change to your screenshots or to your description on the Play Store page, you can see that and see how how it affected your campaign performance. So that's pretty interesting. This, by the way, is just for Android. We don't have that for iOS yet. Now, second type of analysis that you can do is you can look at the source of traffic to your app and look at the devices bringing people, right? And this is how many people came from that source using that device. And I really like this visualization because it shows you this is the website average, and this is below the average, and this is above the average. And we're talking about conversion rate, right? So we can see that Nexus 5 is underperforming, right? It's 3.5% below the average for conversion rates. And we can see that Nexus 4 and Nexus 7, they're above the average. So I think this is great, for example, for you to start thinking about where to optimize your app behavior. Now, let's talk a little bit about AdWords. And so AdWords, we have a pretty powerful integration between AdWords and analytics. And it's very straightforward. You go to your admin panel, and then you can just link AdWords to Google Analytics. But it enables you to see a few reports that will be very powerful in terms of optimizing your campaigns. And the first one that I like is a pretty new one that we have is the tree maps visualization. And basically, what you can see is that the size of the squares, it's the cost of the campaign, and the color is the e-commerce conversion rate, right? So we can see here, right, it's very clear what you should be doing, because those campaigns, they're pretty red, right? And this one is quite green. So you're investing a lot of money on those campaigns, and the e-commerce conversion rate is not that good for those campaigns. Now, I'm not saying that you can look at this and change all your budget to this campaign, because there are other things like cross-device behavior, and maybe a campaign is not good for conversion, but it's good for branding and other types. But I think it's a great report for you to get started about thinking what you should be doing, which campaigns are working really well and which are not working that well, and how to optimize them. Now, another report that I like very much is the hour of the day, and this is a very simple report. You can see here the dark line, which is the per session value of your sessions. And the light line is the number of sessions coming from AdWords. And as you can see, the session value is pretty high in the mornings, but the number of sessions are pretty high in the afternoons, right? So this is very clear also. You should, look at your bid modifiers, maybe try, optimizing the bids for the morning to bring more people in the mornings instead in the afternoons, because, they are the ones that are spending more money with you. So that's another way to look at your AdWords performance. Now, the last example for AdWords, this is a standard Google Analytics report. That's the demographics report. And I like it because you can see age groups and gender, how they perform on the website. And here we can see all the age groups, right? 35 to 44, 25 to 34, and other age groups. And you can see the average order value for each of those groups. And you can see the e-commerce conversion rate, the same visualization that we saw before, right? So here you can see that those age groups, they have very high average order value. And here we are comparing to the average, and those ones, they're above the average in terms of e-commerce conversion rate, and those are below the average, right? And we can see that those two ones, they're really good, right? Because they have slightly higher average order value, and they have a pretty high conversion rate as well. So we really want to get those visitors to come back to our website more often, right? And that's what we're going to do. Right, so if you go to our admin session on Google Analytics, you can click on Audiences. And this is enabled by, you can do that only if you have Google AdWords integrated to Google Analytics. And once you get to Audiences, you can create a new audience. And then you'll just click 25 to 34, 45 to 54, which were the age groups that we just saw that are performing really well. And that, that will, and you can use, this will create a list that you can use on AdWords to remarket to those people so that they see promotions for your website, for example, on the Google Display Network. And And you can also, for example, create lists for people that are not performing well. Maybe they should be coming back to the website, or people that added something to your cart but did not end the process. You can remarket to those people so that they come back to the website to buy whatever they wanted to buy. So this is pretty powerful. It's called remarketing with Google Analytics, so you should look more about that. Now, I was told that it's not very good to use icons on presentations because people might not know what those icons stand for. And I think most people here might not know what those icons stand for. And those are, I think they're advertising networks, and some people use them to advertise. Now, so if you advertise with those companies, right? So we have AdWords, and there is a pretty good integration between AdWords and Analytics, so there's no need to do anything besides linking the accounts. Now, if you're advertising with LinkedIn or Twitter or Facebook, you would really want Google Analytics to know about that, because then you can compare, for example, your Twitter campaign to your AdWords campaign. And the way to do that, you'll have to do two things. First one, you have to add campaign parameters to your campaigns. So basically, you can search for Google Analytics campaign parameters, and you'll just add a few parameters after the destination URL when you create a campaign. And what it gives you is that you can know, for example, when people are coming from Twitter to your website through a campaign or just through some social efforts that you're doing. And this is great because this is not great, this is good because you can know, for example, how many sessions, how many people are coming from those campaigns that you're paying for, and what those people are seeing, what content those people are reading, and how much money they're bringing to the website, right? Now, the problem is, if you do just that, it means that you know that 100,000 people came to your website from a Twitter campaign that you paid for, and you brought $10,000 last week from a Twitter campaign, right? Now, that's good, but the problem is that there is something really, really critical missing from this information, which is how much you spent on that campaign, right? So if you had a campaign on Twitter that you paid $20,000 and you got $10,000, that's pretty bad, right? But if you paid $5,000 and you got $10,000, that's pretty good, right? And that's why you need to have that piece of information, which is the cost information from all your campaigns as well. Now, the way to do that is you'll go to your preferred advertising network, and you can go to Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn, and you can download the cost data for all your campaigns. So things like clicks, impressions, and cost, for example. And for example, Twitter will give you a CSV file with all this information. And what we'll do, you'll go to that same place that I showed you before, which is the data import, right? So you click on admin on the top of the screen once you log into Google Analytics, and then you'll find data import. But this time, instead of uploading user data, you're uploading cost data, right? And what this will give you is something like that on Google Analytics, where you can compare Google CPC, Twitter, and LinkedIn, not only in terms of how many people those campaigns brought and how many revenue those campaigns brought, but also in terms of cost and in terms of cost per acquisition and other meaningful metrics. So this is pretty important to have on your account as well. So a few takeaways. First of all, integrate your data, because it's really important for you to have a comprehensive and accurate view of your data. Second, measure across device to understand the user journey, the full user journey. Add context to your data to make it more meaningful. And measure all campaigns to make smarter marketing decisions. Now, before I leave, I'd like to invite you to the Analytics Academy. It's something that the Google Analytics team has been working very hard on to build courses to teach people how to use analytics the best way. We have a course about digital analytics fundamentals, one about the platform, which is a more technical course, one about e-commerce, and one about mobile apps measurement. So come see, come learn more about analytics, and happy analyzing. Thank you.